you. Wow, what a crowd. Thank you. What a crowd. Enthusiastic, dedicated, and good looking too. We are the best.
Yes, we are.
So we're entering another presidential season. There's a political culture of what you might call camp thinking in this country. An impulse to assume that if you believe A, B, and C, you're automatically must be for X, Y, and Z. Elites controlling the system encourage this at every opportunity and have institutionalized it with the two major parties. Corporate media does their part by never questioning this state of affairs and manufacturing phony hype around meaningless political theater. So, for example, if you're a conservative, you support border security, getting tough on crime, if you support gun rights and traditional family values, you most likely find yourself voting Republican, because they pay lip service to these things at election time. In return for your support, when Republicans are in power, they cut social services, enact tax cuts for the super rich, and are totally subservient to international Jewry. On the other hand, if you support helping students and senior citizens, if you're for workers' rights and environmental protections, you probably vote Democrat. In return for that vote, when Democrats are granted power, they give you anti-white legislation and enforcement. They empower mentally ill sexual perverts and are totally subservient to international Jews. So the two major parties are more like crime syndicates, elbowing their way to the public feeding trough than they are actual political parties in the normal sense of the word. So no matter the outcome of an election, the permanent behind-the-scenes Wall Street party, as Ralph Nader once described it, remains in power. What Nader failed to point out is how Jewish that oligarch party actually is. Now, even if you've freed yourself from this kind of camp thinking, you've been left with little choice but to vote for the lesser of two evils. This has happened over and over again during my lifetime, the results of which are plain for everyone to see, domestically and internationally. If you're someone who is serious about securing our borders, cracking down on violent crime, protecting gun rights and traditional morality, but also believes in social justice, labor rights, and environmental protections, you haven't really had a political home until the National Justice Party. Yeah! So let's look at one example that's been playing out in Atlanta, Georgia. The city of Atlanta is building what they call the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center, commonly referred to as Cop City. It's to be a, quote, police and fire services training center. The 300-acre wooded area where this is being constructed is a former work farm for the Georgia Bureau of Prisons, discontinued and donated to the city of Atlanta. Since then, it has become a habitat for wildlife and a recreation place for hikers, birders, and area residents. Cop City has been met with widespread opposition and protests from residents, left-wing groups, and organizations including the South River Watershed Alliance, the Nature Conservancy in Georgia, and others who supported a city planning proposal from 2017 to invest in a 1,200-acre park around the river's tributaries. They argue that if completed, Cop City would contribute to water pollution, noise pollution, and wildlife loss of habitat. Plans for Cop City include indoor and outdoor shooting ranges, an auditorium, classrooms, a space dedicated to explosion tests, and a mock miniature city to practice high-speed chases and burn building training. The $90 million construction is being built on about 85 of the 300 acres on city-owned property in unincorporated DeKalb County in the South River Forest, whose tree canopy is the most extensive of any metro area in the United States. Opposing this project is not a bad cause. It's a good one. Protecting natural areas is preferable to more militarized cops who will most likely be training to crush the constitutional rights of populists and nationalists. Anyone who doubts this can check out the website of the facility's lead planner, the Atlanta Police Foundation, or APF. On their website, it states, the new Atlanta Public Safety Training Center will reimagine law enforcement training and community engagement. The PSTC will improve morale, retention, recruitment, and training. Set a national standard for community engagement, neighborhood sensitivity, and devotion to the civil rights of all citizens by law enforcement. Facilitate collaboration and joint training between Atlanta's police and their local, state, and federal partner agencies. And it goes on. There's not one word about waging war on out-of-control violent crime in Atlanta. Does that sound like the language the average American wants to hear from the police? No! Everyone knows the major source of Atlanta's crime. If they really wanted to tackle that problem, they'd only need to look back at the example set by Birmingham Commissioner of Public Safety Bull Connor and Governor George Wallace. Who 60 years ago knew how to make southern streets safe. If the system wanted to make the streets safer in Atlanta or anywhere else in America, it would dump liberal, anti-white judges and prosecutors and fire up the electric chair. That would at least be a good start. But Cop City isn't about cleansing the streets of violent criminals. All you have to do is look at who's paying for it to see why. According to an article in The Guardian from March of this year, quote, a new investigation has uncovered connections between private equity firms and a contentious development of a sprawling police and fire service training complex in Atlanta known as Cop City. The article explains, quote, private equity refers to an opaque form of financing away from public markets in which funds and investors manage money for wealthy individuals and institutional investors. The Guardian points to a report that, quote, details links between Rora Capital, an Atlanta-based private equity firm, unquote, and a corporate backer of the Atlanta Police Foundation. They point out Paul Brown, the CEO of Inspire Brands, whose portfolio includes fast food franchises, sits on the board of trustees of the APF, which is raising $60 million from corporate funders to build Cop City. The article goes on to explain how police foundations are nonprofits which raise private money from individual and corporate donors that is funneled to police departments with very little oversight or accountability. The APF has previously helped Atlanta police fund recruitment drives, surveillance cameras, and SWAT team equipment. According to an investigation by NBC affiliate WXIA, 80% of the foundation's money comes from private donations, and the foundation's board of trustees includes executives from Waffle House, AT&T, Delta Airlines, and other companies. Does anyone believe the primary purpose of building this facility by police, moneylenders, and corporate investors is to fight street crime or uphold the Constitution? What is the history and policy of these people towards Black Lives Matter and the far left versus white workers, taxpayers, Trump supporters, let alone law-abiding white nationalists? So why the hell are Antifa against them? The people building Cop City and Antifa want to bring about the same anti-white, globo-homo world by their own admission. Nevertheless, Antifa has pushed their way into the forefront of the opposition, clashing with police and torching construction equipment, resulting in numerous arrests, terrorism charges, and the killing of a transgender squatter by police after he shot at them. Antifa claims the center will militarize police and promote violent policing tactics, especially on communities of color. Well, they're right about the first part. If you pointed out the shared anti-white agenda between Antifa and Cop City supporters, they would likely say that they are environmentalists and the people they're rioting against are not. Now, I know a little bit about nature lovers and environmentalists. I've been participating in Audubon Christmas bird count since I was in high school. I ran for public office with the West Virginia Mountain Party, which is the West Virginia affiliate of the Green Party. My family and I placed our land in a conservation easement. I've planted over 400 red spruce and Canadian Valley fir trees on our land. And I can tell you this, there are nature lovers and there are environmentalists. Nature lovers, it could be said, are all environmentalists. But not all environmentalists are nature lovers in the true sense of the word. The majority of the people who claim to be environmentalists would self-identify as liberal left. Many of them don't really know much about the natural world or spend very much time in rural or wilderness areas. They're just trendy and politically correct, and in many cases have a hidden agenda, an ulterior motive. A Brookings Institute article from 2019 titled, "America Has Two Economies and They're Diverging Fast," reveals how the economy of red state America depends on traditional manufacturing, agriculture, and extraction industries, while urban and coastal areas depend on higher skilled, higher tech professional and digital services. Research shows that the wealth of the nation is being transferred from rural red state America to liberal coastal and urban elites. The median household income of Democratic districts is going up, while that of Republican districts is going down. There have been numerous articles about this phenomenon over the past several years. Ronald Brownstein for instance, wrote an article for The Atlantic in 2022 titled "The Green Energy Culture Wars in Red States." He starts by saying, quote, "The battle over the nation's energy future has become another front in the escalating cultural and political confrontation between what America has been and what it is becoming. Jews like Brownstein and his liberal left collaborators are happy to see the livelihoods of red state Americans destroyed and what little remains of economic security among white workers be transferred to liberal elites. Whites understand this and in their gut, and as a result are skeptical of so-called tree huggers, to say the least. Having said all that, change is inevitable as newer and better ways of doing things emerge. Human history is a history of our way of life changing. I'm sure many good men fed their families working as lamplighters, dirigible pilots, or managing their darkies in the cotton fields. Those jobs are gone, and they're never coming back. We'd all be better off today if one of those jobs had never existed in the first place. But people will never trust those who hate them to usher in the new age. That's one of the reasons Richard Nixon was able to implement so many environmental protections. He wasn't a liberal. The NJP will never throw white communities under the bus in the name of progress. Think about this. What kind of person calls themselves an environmentalist and then advocates for policies that undeniably degrade the environment? Nearly everything the liberal left supports leads to environmental destruction. They bemoan the carbon footprint of the average person in America, while at the same time demanding open borders, flooding the West with non-whites who breed like rabbits. They rightfully sound the alarm about urban sprawl, the loss of farmland and wilderness to development. But simultaneously, they support Black Lives Matter, liberal judges and anti-white prosecutors, thereby guaranteeing the exodus of millions of whites into the suburbs and countryside. They lament the pollution and gridlock of American automobile culture, but then they create conditions where commuters would rather sit in traffic for 2 to 3 hours a day than risk being robbed, raped, or killed on a bus or train. They claim to believe in science, but they're cafeteria scientists, believing climate science but rejecting racial science. They just blow off centuries of anthropological and zoological research because they don't like the results. And it's not just science, it's common sense. If you're a liberal and you think race isn't real, it's only a social construct or whatever, I suggest you try having an evening out some Friday night in North Philly. Spend the evening having drinks and socializing in one of the corner bars there. Then after the bar closes, take the Broad Street subway back to your hotel downtown. Then tell me, if you're still able to speak, that the only difference between the races is the color of their skin. And conservatives are just as dishonest. If you're a conservative and don't believe humans are contributing to global warming, try standing in the middle of a blacktop or concrete parking lot on a sunny day in the middle of July. Then walk into the woods adjoining that lot and see if there's any difference. Try parking your car in your garage. Close the windows and doors and run the engine for a couple of hours while you take a nap in the back seat. When you wake up, if you wake up at all, explain how all the vehicles, all the chimneys, and all the smokestacks on planet Earth don't affect our atmosphere. The upshot of all this is that our violent crime problem and our environmental problems are racial problems at their foundation, with two major components. One is a legal system that gives the green light to a growing population of retarded criminal apes to do as they please with little or no consequences. This element of the population This element of the population is homegrown and increasingly coming across our borders from the worst parts of the world. Everyone is familiar with this. It's obvious to every normal person with eyes to see. The second racial component may not be so obvious at first glance. Oswald Spengler and Francis Parker Yockey wrote about economic man versus culture man. A man of culture could be described as a good racial type. He was and is a man who sees the role of economics as feeding or nourishing a culture and the people who created it, not as an end in itself. The current world order is not led by good racial types. It's led by men who are clever at making money and bad at everything else. Their focus is financial profit, and their vision takes them no further than the end of the next quarter, the end of the fiscal year, or 5 years at the most. Endless growth is their mantra. Easter Island is apparently their inspiration. They don't see capitalism as a useful tool when regulated and contained like fire in a stove, but demand no regulation or containment. And as a consequence, they are burning everything down, nations, cultures, and the earth itself. The left can't stop them for two major reasons, with or without Cop City. The first reason is they share the same anti-national ambitions as capitalist elites. And the second reason is they are incapable of ever gaining the popular support needed to achieve legitimate goals. The NJP believes in science, racial and environmental, because you can't separate the two. We believe in using science and common sense to set policies beneficial to our people and the world we live in, unlike the protagonists on either side of the Cop City fight. We appreciate the value of unspoiled wilderness, knowing that our greatest artists, poets, and composers have drawn inspiration from God's creation for thousands of years. Point 22 of the NJP's platform states, the state must act as a steward of the environment. Industrial and economic needs will be balanced with quality of life and the preservation of natural beauty. Wildlife will be protected, and we will expand national parks and wilderness areas. Religious slaughter and other inhumane treatment of animals will be banned. So if you're someone who is serious about conservation and ending the greedy, unsustainable assault on our natural world, join the National Justice Party. Thank you.